Ghost in the Machine, Part 5. If you haven't finished Part 4 yet, there was a video at the end, so make sure you go back and watch that video. Monday, September 20th, 8:15 a.m. I really hope that all librarians aren't like Gladys Morgan, because I'd really like at some point to walk into a library and not be afraid for my life. It definitely looked like she was trying to hide that wooden crow, but why bother? I've seen it dozens of times over the years and never thought twice about it. I even remember thinking it was crooked once and thinking someone should nail it up there tighter so it wouldn't fall off in the wind when it blew down Main Street. It's funny how you can look at something and ascribe no meaning to it forever and ever. Then one day you see it in a completely different way. That wooden crow has sat quietly turning for years while no one paid any attention. Almost no one. My dad was paying attention. So was Gladys, old Joe Bush, and Francis Palmer used to pay attention before they died. I wonder when the crow is going to turn again, and when it does, who will do the turning? Monday, September 20th, 10:10 a.m. Henry wandered up here with a cup of coffee. He didn't exactly startle me when he came in, but Henry doesn't really knock so much as barge. He was standing in the doorway when I realized I had a bunch of names from the secret room written on a piece of paper next to my laptop. Some of the names were scratched out because I've discovered that they were dead. I set my elbow on the list. Henry already had his fishing boots on, which my mom hates because they smell like a moldy loaf of bread. He's not supposed to wear them in the house. It made me wonder if he'd worn them to bed. He started talking to me the second he entered the room. I sleep like the dead up here in the mountains. You? I nodded, and Henry looked around the room. His eyes locked on the dark side of the moon poster. How come you moved that? Trying to change things up, I guess. I remember one of those songs. Used to get stuck in my head a lot. And then he sang a verse, off-key, which sort of freaked me out. It was the one about the rabbit running and digging holes and never getting to stop. I think Henry was half amazed he could remember the words. I can hear that song in my head like it was yesterday, he said. Then he was a little sad, an emotion I'd almost never seen him display. 2 more days and it's back to the city for old Henry, he went on. Time to dig another hole, I guess, like the good song says. Why don't you just quit and come live here with us, I asked. I think my dad would like that. For starters, your mother would kill me. Me and my boots and poker and dragging your dad out to the river. 2 weeks a year is pushing things as it is. My mom loves you, I said, and I meant it. Well, I'm easy to love for a couple of weeks. Gets a little harder after that. He laughed this comment off, but I think deep down he was serious. I'd never really thought of it that way, but I could see he might have a point. The charm of an old bachelor like Henry probably wears thin after a while. I don't mind him hogging all the time with Dad, but if he were here all the time, I'd mind. I like Henry's loud voice and his energy and the way he can get everyone to play cards, but there's a twitch that sets in after a couple of weeks when it starts to feel like he's almost annoying. Henry's smarter than he knows to leave us wanting more and never overstay his welcome. I decided to ask him a question. You ever talk to Gladys, the librarian? Henry was leaning against the door jamb. It appeared he was trying to remember the next verse to the song he'd sung. Finally, he refocused. I haven't said a word to Gladys Morgan in 10 years. Me and her had a run-in. If I see her coming, I head for the other side of the street. I thought this sounded like there might be a good story, so I prodded him. What happened? What did she do? Let's just say she's not as patient as your mom. I stepped into her precious library with my wet boots on, just off the stream, sloshed right up to her desk and asked if she had anything on barbecuing a pig. You're kidding. Nope. She looked me up and down like I'd picked up her cat and thrown it in front of a moving truck. That woman can glare better than all the New York ladies that have turned me down for a date. So she glared. Then, get this, she got out of her chair, came around the desk, and kicked me. She did not. Not only that, but she told me I better take my stupid pig and my wet boots and go outside and never come back. I told her I didn't exactly have the pig with me. It was just something I was thinking about. That didn't go over too well. The scary thing was, I could totally picture all this happening. What'd she say when you told her you didn't have the pig? I asked. She said if it was between me and a chicken and she could only save one of us, she'd definitely save the chicken. Henry laughed his big laugh again, and I laughed too. That Gladys Morgan, what a kook. I was feeling bold, so I kept going. You ever see Dr. Watts? I asked. He's dead, said Henry. No, he's not. Mom said so. Henry scratched his stubbly face. I thought he was dead. I haven't seen him in forever. You sure he's alive? Well, that's what Mom said. Henry seemed a little perplexed. Well, if she says so. Henry looked at the Pink Floyd poster again, and I was sure he'd see it was crooked and want to move it. You see that story in the paper about the dredge? He said. Henry had been sensitive to my accident there and didn't mention it much. Yeah, I said. They're burning it down. It's a shame I'm leaving so soon. Hate to miss the biggest bonfire in 3 counties. But you know how some people feel about me around here. Probably best if I'm gone when the old relic finally gets what's coming to it. I know I've mentioned this before, but Henry used to work for New York Gold and Silver. He'd come out when the dredge was running way back in the day to keep an eye on number 42. He hated what the dredge did to the land, but he was young and ambitious back then. He told me as much. He wanted a big career at a big company in a big city, just like a lot of people. Skeleton Creek stayed in his bones long after New York Gold and Silver went bankrupt. Some say Henry keeps spending all his vacation time here because he feels bad about working for a company that almost destroyed the town. I think he comes here because his best friend is here, my dad, and because he loves the mountains. I felt a little sorry for Henry when he peeled himself from my room and went downstairs. I heard the screen door flap against the wall and knew he'd gone to the creek. So now I'm alone in the house again, and I can't help thinking about what it feels like to live in Skeleton Creek. I've been trying to put my finger on it for a long time. No one new ever moves here. It's the same old people, keeping mostly to themselves. There's a kind of gothic loneliness about everything. You know what it feels like? It feels like the dredge dug the heart out of my town and chucked it into the woods. All that's left are the ghosts walking around. Monday, September 20th, 4:10 p.m. Well, my parents can't complain about me sitting in my room all day. Henry came back and talked me into going down to the creek with my fly rod. I haven't been up to fishing since before the accident, and I probably had no business standing anywhere near fast-moving water with a shattered leg barely out of a full-leg cast. Henry did most of the casting, catching, hooting and hollering. I mostly sat in the shade and watched him work his way up and down the best stretches of Skeleton Creek, hooking fish after fish. I have to give him credit. He'd learned the water and knew when to throw. I've been fishing nothing but Skeleton Creek all summer for years, and I've never caught as many big fish as I saw Henry catch today. The guy is a machine. Being out near the water today made me value it more than ever. The creek is lined with these great big cottonwood trees that fill the air with what looks like snow every time the wind blows, and there are groves of aspen, thin trees with white bark and gold leaves, huddled close along the banks of some of the best water. Those aspen groves will take your breath away. And there's one other thing, a part of this place that makes it unlike any other. All those big piles of rocks and earth the dredge dug up formed an endless line of rolling hills along the banks of the creek. Over the years, the surface filled with grass and trees and flowering plants. The creek is like a secret paradise no one has discovered way up here, tucked away in the woods next to a ramshackle town the size of a postage stamp. There are birds everywhere, little creatures scampering and chirping over the hills, and larger animals rustling in hidden places nearby. All these sights and sounds today made me realize how much I missed visiting the creek. It gave me a view of things I hadn't thought of before. I'd only ever hated the dredge like everyone else, but right here, right under my nose, is this spectacular thing the dredge left behind. It makes me wonder if this is a principle that can be counted on. Good things can be created from bad. I can't stop thinking about how this old town of mine just needs a lucky break to start heading in the right direction again. Monday, September 20th, 7:25 p.m. Sometimes after one of Henry's barbecues, or a morning at the cafe eating chicken fried steak and eggs, my mom decides the McRaes need to eat a healthy dinner. This is a terrible idea, and always puts my dad in a bad mood. Just eat. It's not going to kill any of you. These were my mom's words as my dad, Henry, and I sat staring at the food she'd placed before us. What is it? Henry was brave enough to ask. He was about half serious and half honestly curious as he stared at the 3 bowls clustered together in the middle of the table. That right there is rice, I said, pointing to the round bowl in the middle. It's brown rice, my mom corrected, staring at Henry. Are you going to tell me you've never seen rice before? Henry had seen rice. It was the main dish he was worried about. What about that stuff? He asked. He pointed to a bowl filled with something that looked like green logs floating in a purple lake. You really want to know? Asked Mom. Because you're eating it whether I tell you or not. Henry pondered his options, swallowed hard, and nodded. Tell me. My mom scooped up a big spoonful of brown rice and slapped it onto Henry's plate. Then she ladled a glob of purple lake water and green sticks over the top. Low-fat yogurt with whole beets, pulverized in a blender and poured over a can of green beans. Eat up. Henry looked like he was about to barf. The last item was a flat pan of green Jell-O with sad little mandarin oranges trapped all through the middle. My dad put about half the pan of Jell-O on his plate, so there was no room for anything else, and then he sat there, slurping miserably with a spoon. Stop that, my mom said. She can't stand it when people slurp their Jell-O. The best part was when my mom took a bite of this crazy concoction and chewed, but couldn't swallow without washing it down with a Diet Coke. She tried really hard to keep a straight face, but once Henry took a bite himself, just to be a good sport, his eyes started bulging, and Mom came completely unglued. We all had a pretty good laugh, and then she let Henry and my dad go to the kitchen and make pancakes for dinner. We sat there, me and my mom, eating Jell-O without slurping. "You doing okay?" she asked. "Yeah. It was nice going to the creek today. I haven't done that for a while." "I'm glad you went outside. The fresh air is good for you." I nodded and took another bite of green Jell-O. "I checked your computer last night," she said. "It looked clean. A little too clean, if you get my drift." Uh-oh. Maybe my mom knows more about computers than I thought. Was I erasing everything? Was I making it look too perfect? I pretty much expected what came next. "Have you been talking to Sarah?" The big question. I was asked in one form or another every day. It should have gotten easier to lie, but the guilt was starting to pile up, so it only got harder. "I'm not talking to anyone. I just like my computer clean. It runs faster that way." Mom looked at me sideways. "Now we're talking," Henry yelled. He was balancing some king-size pancakes on a spatula in one hand and carrying a handful of paper plates in the other. My mom kept looking at me, but Henry had saved me from any more cross-examination at the dinner table. She left me alone after that, but I had the feeling she didn't trust me. I couldn't blame her, and was worried it would mean she'd be watching even closer than before. With school starting in only a week, her radar was dialed in and searching for clues. In another half hour, it'll be dark. I can't get out of here. If I go for a walk alone, they'll assume I'm trying to see Sarah. I haven't heard from her all day. I bet she sent me something. The Blue Rock in the morning. That's the soonest I can try to contact her.